Before I start the video, I want to tell you about my Discord server. It's a fun place where Ninjago fans gather and chat. We have many special games and events, so don't forget to join, link is in the description. Hello friends, welcome back to another video. So only 3 videos left in the ranking series, and this is one of them. Today I will rank every main villain in Ninjago. Villains like Kozu and Cryptor will not be included as they are secondary villains. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Aspheera is so bad that she became a meme in the community, but to be honest, my main problem with her isn't that she has a very repetitive and boring motive, but because of her awful backstory that makes no sense at all. Who told her that she has to promise him that she won't use Spinjusta for evil, but she broke the promise and used it for evil? How can she blame Mu for locking her in the pyramid and call him a traitor after she was the one to betray him? That makes zero sense and makes Aspheera a very shallow and dumb character, but even the whole revenge screaming thing was really bad. Aspheera has to be one of Ninjago's most poorly written characters, if not the most. She's not just a bad character, but worse, and a logical character that makes no sense. To be honest, I don't know if Mammatus even counts as a villain. His name was literally never said in the show, and that shows that he's not being taken seriously at all. He has very boring and generic lines, but there is literally nothing to his character. He's just the leader of the Keepers. We don't even know why, he's just that, you know. I honestly have nothing to say about him, so yeah, let's move on. The Overlord, Ninjago's most generic villain. It's so generic that even his name is generic. The Overlord. That has to be the worst villain name. The Overlord is a very boring villain. He doesn't have any special qualities at all, he's just the emotionless, completely evil bad guy. There's no depth at all to his character and he isn't relatable. He's also very dumb and arrogant, and his arrogance is what caused his defeat in Season 2. If he didn't get rid of the Helmet of Shadows, he would have had the Stone Army on his side, but no. He's the Overlord, he's too strong in his own. He was really bad in Season 2, he wasn't good in Season 3 and he will never be good, but he was a bit better during Rebooted, because the futuristical theme made him a little bit more interesting. His relationship with Garmadon was kinda interesting, but overall this is obviously the worst type of villains. Very generic and nothing creative or deep. I don't think that the Overlord is bad because of how he was executed, but rather because of his concept and base. The Omega is Mammatus, but a bit better because he has amazing dialogue at least. But he has the same problems as Mammatus. It's just the leader and we know nothing else about him. But Omega feels more prestigious and significant. His relationship with Garmadon was really cool and I loved how he kept wondering why is Garmadon helping the humankind, even though he's an Oni. That's a really great connection. Overall, I think that more backstory will have helped Omega. Maybe making him one of the 3 Oni warlords or the firstborn of the Oni. Something like that would have made him way better. But it's just a fine villain. The main villain that barely appeared during his season. Onigami wants to meet his creator in real life to understand why he created him and all that stuff. So Onigami is basically having a crisis, which I like. It's a breath of fresh air after all the villains wanting to destroy or take over Ninjago. But at the same time, it's not really as interesting, and it would have been way better if that arc was focused on more during the season, because we literally only found out about it like in the last few episodes. Another villain who had good concepts, but the awful execution ruined him. He literally doesn't appear in most of the season, which is just awful. Could have been better. The Ice Emperor has to be Ninjago's worst plot twist. It's so predictable that we knew the Ice Emperor is Zane even before we got the trailer for the season. But still, I think that the Ice Emperor is a bit cool. He has great voice acting and presence on the screen. He's one of the coldest Ninjago villains, literally. His conclusion, backstory, motives, plot twist, they are all very poorly done and weak aspects, but his cool personality and prestige were enough to make him this high on the list. The best thing about Yang is his motives. He just wants to be remembered by the world. And on paper that sounds really cool. But the problem is that he's the creator of Verjutsu, so nobody's gonna forget him in the first place. It's kinda dumb that it took Cole telling him that for Yang to realize it. But I still think that his motives were pretty cool even though they have a small problem. His redemption was rushed though. And the whole Master of the House thing is really dumb and should have not been a thing, to be honest. I think that it would have been better if Yang actually entered the rift alongside Cole, then went on his own journey. Then we can see him being Cole's mentor after Wu was lost in time. Which happened in Way of the Departed actually, but it would have been even cooler if you had at least one scene with Cole and Yang in Season 8. But overall, good villain, he just needed more time and focus, and he could have easily been one of my favorite villains. Like Yang, the Time Twins had great potential but ended up being kinda lame. The element of time is amazing and easily one of the strongest. Them thinking that they are superior because they have the most powerful element was pretty dumb though. I mean, it's a cool motive, but wanting to take over Ninjago is a really repetitive motive at that point. It would have been way better if the real reason for their betrayal was Chen's manipulation, which actually was supposed to be their actual motive, but some employee on LEGO didn't like that idea, so they had to scrap it. I'm gonna have that as a headcanon though, especially that it was intended by the writers. Krux is very annoying. His hate for technology is not explained at all and so random. If you had something to the point of wanting to go back in time and erase it from existence, you need to have a reason at least. But Acronix is a bit better. At least he has a fun personality. Overall, decent villains, but bad execution and writing ruined them. Another twist villain, but this time it was actually unexpected. Nobody saw this one coming. That doesn't necessarily make it a good plot twist though. I also like how this is Ninjago's most basic villain. He just wants money. He doesn't want to take over the world or destroy it, just money, which is pretty cool. I also like how he caused the war between the monks and geckos, but he doesn't have the level of depth and emotion that other villains have. You kinda don't even care about him during your watch for the season and you just see him as this bad guy who will be defeated. Overall, decent villain. The final new Ninjago villain. Kalmaar has the best voice acting probably in all of Ninjago. Props to Gil Spanton, he did a fantastic job. I actually repeated a lot of scenes from the season only to hear Kalmaar's great voice acting again, and that definitely helped in making Kalmaar a better villain. I also like his personality and how deceiving he is. He has the same generic motives though, which is hating the surface dwellers for some reason, so he wants to unleash Wojira to destroy them and take over the world, which is exactly Pythor but a little bit weaker. So Kalmaar is fun, good personality, great voice acting and connections with other characters, especially Benthomar, good villain overall. And speaking of Pythor, he's next on the list. So Pythor is exactly like Kalmaar, but a little bit better because he had more times to shine during his focus season. He's very deceiving, which makes sense because he's literally a snake. And that's a lesson for you kids, never trust a snake. I also don't like that type of villains who want to resurrect a monster because it makes them really dumb. Who in the world will want to resurrect a massive hostile monster? It will devour everything, including the very person who resurrected them. Which is exactly what happened with both Pythor and Kalmaar and even Morro. It's a really stupid idea that makes no sense. But yeah, I still like Pythor, especially because of seasons 3 and 4, because he became a bit better in those seasons. Good villain and character. Iron Baron is a very underrated villain. Before Kalmaar existed, I used to think that Iron Baron is by far Ninjago's greatest character in terms of voice acting. I honestly still have doubts between him and Kalmaar for that title, but they both have incredible voices. Iron Baron is a very unique villain. Like this called Sorcerer and Yang, I like that he has unique motives, which are that he just wants to continue possessing the spot he already gained. It's true that he wanted to gain the dragon armor in the end, but that's not really his main goal after all. I also like his personality and how he can be very ruthless yet funny at the same time, which is really hard to write actually. I love his dynamic with the Jet Jack in Heavy Metal and even Wu in episode 93. He's also one of Ninjago's darkest characters. He lied to the dragon hunters for years about the Oni and killed many of his warriors just to prove this lie. He lost an arm and a leg, and his death is just super dark, and this makes him a very interesting and memorable character. I really like Iron Baron, he's a great villain. I have a lot to say about Morro, which will require an entire video, but I'm just gonna talk about him overall in here. He's a great villain but had some missed opportunities. He's the perfect example of an amazing villain who could have been even better, such as his relationship with Kai, but I already made a video about it. I really wish that we saw a lot of focus on it during Possession, because it's really the greatest hero-villain relationship in the show. But still, I love how you can feel all the anger and hunger inside him. He's a really tragic character. He went from a poor orphan who eats from garbage, to discovering that he's the elemental master of wind, to training under the greatest sensei Ninjago, and finally having the opportunity to become the greatest warrior of the land. We really made him believe that he can become the Green Ninja, but destiny failed him, which is very sad. It's mostly Wu's fault, and even Wu himself said that Morro was his greatest regret, which is very true. His conclusion was very emotional, still is one of the show's saddest scenes. If your audience felt really sad because of a villain's death, then you have to know that you wrote a legendary villain. Morro is a very tragic, relatable and extremely well written villain. Chen is also a very underrated villain. He is easily the funniest villain, yet he is one of the darkest. I love his voice acting and his personality is very unique. He is so fun to watch and you always want to see more of him on the screen, and that's called good presence. I love how this time the ninja don't spend the majority of the season fighting the villain, but trying to figure out his plan and play by his rules, which is a very unique idea and was very exciting even for the plot of the season. He has amazing motives. He obviously went through a lot of bullying and mockery when he was younger, and that was revealed during his scene with the Kai in episode 41, which caused a lot of of anger in him and made him want to show everybody that he is a very powerful person even without natural power, and that caused him to forget his most trusted helper and not care about anybody, even his own daughter. Even his conclusion was really dark. He literally went to hell. And not to forget his complex backstory in the Soviet War, this is just top tier writing and a very complex character, amazing, a very unique villain. I'm actually surprised that Nadakhan is this high on my list because I usually prefer more realistic or human villains such as Morro, Chen and Harumi, and that just proves how great of a villain Nadakhan is. The idea of the three wishes was very creative, and the idea of the Jinn not being able to wish for himself was even more interesting. I love all of the scenes between Nadakhan and the ninja where he traps them. It shows how good the writing is and how clever the writers can be. Because in order to write a smart character, you need to be smart yourself. Those are some of the most shocking scenes of the show. I'm not a fan of this type of voice acting that feels very heavy, but I think it was fitting for Nadakhan's character. His relationship with Flintlock and Clancy was interesting as well. His motives are also super awesome because they make Nadakhan feel like an innocent character. The ninja destroyed his homeland, so he wants to make their realm his own, which makes complete sense, and his ending was really sad, to be honest. Very well written and interesting villain. Garmadon has to be Ninjago's most complex villain. Like, look at all the stages he went through, it's just crazy, and like all the other villains, he was written on the span of the entire show, so we can imagine how much development and focus he had. We saw half good and half evil Garmadon, we saw completely good Garmadon, we saw completely evil Garmadon, and all the versions were awesome, but my favorite has to be Emperor Garmadon. Even each stage of Garmadon's character went through different stages. Emperor Garmadon was completely evil in season 8, which was so awesome to see, pure evil. Then we saw in season 9 that he's actually afraid of the Oni and wants to protect Ninjago from them, so he has an emotional side as well, not just pure evil. And in season 10 we saw how he understood humanity, became, I wouldn't say a good person, but at least a more logical one. Even Lord Garmadon was really good with the emotional conflict between him and Lloyd and even inside of him. Garmadon is a very interesting character because he didn't choose to be evil, it was destined for him to be like that. And what's sad about it is that even when things started to get better and he became Sensei Garmadon in seasons 3 and 4, he died and returned as an evil monster in season 8. It's like destiny doesn't want things to go the way we want them to go, which is very tragic. I still have a lot to say about him and how complex and well written Garmadon is, but I think we need to leave that for another video. And finally, you have my favorite Ninjago villain, Harumi. I actually made 3 videos about her, which is a lot. I'm gonna keep it brief in here because I don't want to seem repetitive. You can watch these videos if you wanna know why Harumi is my favorite Ninjago villain. There'll be a link in the description. Harumi feels a lot like Morro. You can see the anger and hunger side of her. She just wanted a normal, peaceful life with her parents like any normal child. But the ninja and their inability to protect the city in the way Harumi wants made her lose her parents. So she grew up hating the ninja and putting all the blame on them. Who doesn't want to become a prince or princess? But Harumi didn't care, which shows that she isn't selfish and doesn't care about money and fame. She has a very interesting vision and philosophy that feels very logical. You can even compare her to Thanos, which are 2 very similar characters. And the twist of her being the quiet one is easily one of the best and most shocking of the show. Perfect villain that will never be topped. So yeah, that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to tell me in the comments what are your favorite villains. And the next video will actually be ranking the seasons. So yeah, stay tuned for that, and it will take a lot of time. So yeah, stay tuned for that. So yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe, share to your friends, and I'll see you next time.